Inside a crowded neighborhood grocery store, people moved quickly through the aisles, grabbing the last things they needed before heading home. Shopping carts rattled across the polished floor. The smell of fresh bread drifted from the bakery section. Everything looked normal, until one small moment at the checkout counter suddenly made the entire store fall silent. A woman in her early 40s stood at the register. Her cart held only a few basic items: milk, bread, eggs, and a small box of cereal. Nothing expensive, nothing unusual. But when the cashier scanned the last item and the woman inserted her credit card into the machine, the screen flashed red. Declined. The cashier frowned and tried again. The woman forced a small, embarrassed smile. "Sorry, could you run it one more time?" The cashier nodded and tried again, but the machine beeped. Declined. Again. People in line behind her began to whisper. Some rolled their eyes impatiently. Others simply watched. The woman's cheeks slowly turned red. She looked down at the floor, clearly uncomfortable, and then quietly began removing items from her cart. "Maybe just the milk," she said softly. That's when a calm voice behind her spoke up. "Don't worry about it." A quiet man stepped forward and placed his card on the counter. "I'll cover it." The woman turned around in surprise. She had never seen him before. But what she didn't know was that the simple decision that man made in that moment was about to change both of their lives. The woman's name was Victoria Hale. But inside that grocery store, no one recognized her. She wore simple clothes, a gray sweater, jeans, and comfortable sneakers. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose ponytail. To anyone watching, she looked like just another tired customer finishing errands after work. No one would have guessed the truth. Victoria Hale was the CEO of Hale Global Industries, one of the largest technology companies in the United States. A billion-dollar corporation, thousands of employees, international offices, and a name that regularly appeared on business magazine covers. But tonight, Victoria wasn't thinking about business deals or board meetings. She had spent the entire day visiting a small community center her company was planning to fund. By the time she finished, she realized she needed to stop by a grocery store before heading home. Normally, she didn't even shop for groceries herself. Her assistant usually handled it. But tonight, she wanted something simple, just a quiet moment of normal life. Unfortunately, something had gone wrong with her corporate card earlier that day. Her bank had temporarily frozen it after detecting unusual travel charges. She hadn't noticed until now. And standing at the checkout line with strangers watching, she suddenly felt something she hadn't felt in years: embarrassment. Victoria began removing items from her bag one by one. "Let's just keep the milk," she said quietly to the cashier. But before the cashier could respond, the man behind her gently pushed his card across the counter. "Please," he said calmly, "just ring it up." Victoria looked at him in surprise. He was probably in his mid-30s, tall, slim, wearing a simple dark jacket and work boots. His face looked calm, almost shy. "You don't have to do that," she said quickly. The man shrugged slightly. "It's not a big deal." The cashier looked between them. "Should I?" The man nodded. "Go ahead." Within seconds, the receipt printed. The man handed Victoria the grocery bag. "Here you go." Victoria hesitated. "You really didn't have to do that." He gave a small smile. Everyone needs help sometimes. Then he grabbed his own groceries and walked toward the exit like nothing unusual had happened. Victoria stood there for a moment, completely stunned. Most people with money were used to helping others, but she wasn't used to being helped herself, especially by someone who expected absolutely nothing in return. She quickly left the store and caught up to him in the parking lot. "Wait." The man turned. "Yes?" "At least let me pay you back," she said. He shook his head gently. "It's okay." She frowned slightly. "You don't even know me." The man gave a small, thoughtful smile. "I know enough." "And what's that?" "You were having a rough moment." Victoria crossed her arms slightly. "And that's reason enough to pay for a stranger's groceries?" He shrugged again. "My mom used to say something." "What?" "She said if you have the chance to make someone's day easier, you should take it." Victoria studied him for a moment. "What's your name?" "Daniel." "Daniel what?" "Daniel Carter." She nodded slowly. "Well, Daniel Carter, thank you." He waved casually. "No problem." And just like that, he walked away, not realizing that the woman he had just helped ran a multi-billion-dollar company. The next morning, Daniel Carter arrived at work like any other day. He worked as a warehouse supervisor for a small delivery company. The job was exhausting, but it paid the bills, mostly. He had completely forgotten about the grocery store incident the night before. To him, it was nothing special, just another small act of kindness. But around 10:30 a.m., his boss suddenly walked into the warehouse. "Daniel," he said, "there's someone here asking for you." Daniel wiped his hands on a rag. "For me?" "Yeah." Daniel walked toward the office entrance and stopped, because parked outside the building were two sleek black SUVs. Two men in suits stood near the door, and standing between them was the same woman from the grocery store. Except today, she looked completely different. Her hair was styled neatly. She wore a tailored black coat, elegant heels, and carried herself with quiet confidence. Daniel blinked. Hi?" The woman smiled warmly. "Good morning, Daniel." "Morning." He looked at the SUVs, then at the men in suits. "Is everything okay?" The woman stepped forward. "I never properly introduced myself yesterday." Daniel laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, you kinda disappeared." She extended her hand. "My name is Victoria Hale." Daniel shook it, but the name didn't immediately register, until his boss suddenly gasped. "Wait." His boss pulled out his phone and quickly searched something, then turned the screen toward Daniel. On the screen was a business magazine cover. The same woman, the same face, the same name. CEO, Hale Global Industries. Daniel's eyes widened. "Wait, you're that Victoria Hale?" She smiled slightly. "Yes." Daniel looked completely stunned. "So you mean billionaire Victoria Hale?" She nodded. "That would be me." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "So yesterday, at the grocery store—" "My card was declined," she said calmly, "and you helped me anyway." Daniel stared at her. "Well, now this is extremely embarrassing." She raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because if I knew you were a billionaire, I definitely wouldn't have paid." Victoria laughed softly. "Exactly." Victoria stepped closer. "Daniel, do you know why I came here today?" He shook his head. "No idea." "Because what you did yesterday was rare." Daniel shrugged. "It was just groceries." She shook her head gently. "No. It was kindness without expectation." Daniel crossed his arms. "I'm pretty sure lots of people would have done the same thing." Victoria smiled knowingly. "You'd be surprised." She paused for a moment. "Do you know how many people asked me for something yesterday? Probably a lot. Emails, calls, business proposals, investment requests." She looked him directly in the eyes. "But you were the only person who gave something without knowing who I was." Daniel didn't know what to say. So he asked cautiously, "What happens now?" Victoria reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "A thank you." Daniel raised his hands quickly. "Nope, I'm not taking money." Victoria smiled. "It's not money." Daniel opened the envelope. Inside was a card. He read it slowly, then looked up in shock. "This is a job offer?" Victoria nodded. "Operations manager." Daniel blinked several times. "For your company?" "Yes." Daniel laughed nervously. "You realize I manage forklifts, right?" Victoria nodded. "And people." He looked down again at the card. The salary listed on it was more than double what he currently earned. "You're offering me this because I paid for milk and cereal?" Victoria shook her head. "I'm offering it because character matters more than resumes." Daniel stood silently for a long moment, processing everything. Then he finally said something quietly. "My mom used to say something similar." "What was that?" Victoria asked. Daniel smiled slightly. "She said the world changes when ordinary people choose to do the right thing." Victoria nodded slowly. "I think your mom was right." Because the truth is, kindness is powerful. Not when cameras are watching, not when rewards are promised, but when someone chooses to help simply because it's the right thing to do. Daniel Carter thought he was just helping a stranger buy groceries. But that small act of kindness opened a door he never expected. And it proved something important. You never know who someone really is. And sometimes, the person you help today might be the one who changes your life tomorrow.